A charming girl peers out the window of a carriage that's in motion, fascinated by the view of the ancient royal capital, which has a completely different feel compared to Bao'e. He is with an older man who calls her Princess Alicia, reminding her that a future Queen of Windsor should always be dignified. She sits down and says sorry to the old man, who is Chancellor Richard. He scolds her, insisting that she must behave in a way that doesn't disgrace Princess Kara's name, which annoys Princess Alicia, particularly because her family is being held captive. She looks out and sees a gigantic castle that seems haunted, surrounded by crows. This is the castle of the ruthless Demon King, and fear washes over her. Clenching her fist, she vows to do everything she can to survive. Inside the castle, a horrifying scream from a man echoes through the hall as guards hold him down. A man named Wilfred, holding a sword, stands before the man who kept asking Wilfred why he did it. He even officially named Wilfred as his brother and promoted him to general, asking Wilfred if he have forgotten that debt. Wilfred, the man with black hair and half of his face masked, tells him that what he received is not a debt, as they only used him when it was convenient, treating him as a tool to boost national prestige. The man being pinned down appears to be the king. The king admits that there was that aspect, but argues that if he hadn't elevated Wilfred, he would still be confined in a remote place. Wilfred sighs and smirks, and thinking back to when the gears of fate went off track, as he raises his sword, ready to strike at any moment. Yet, the king insists that even if they are only half-brothers, they are still brothers, and he asks Wilfred if he truly plans to kill him. Wilfred didn't think twice and replied that he would. The king begged him to spare his life, that he will give up the throne and he doesn't want to die. He continued to plead for his life as Wilfred glared at him with contempt and swung his sword, severing the king's head. With blood on his face and clothes, Wilfred thought this could have been avoided if his half-brother had been a better king. As blood dripped from his sword, a man who seemed to be his aide congratulated him and politely urged Wilfred to take his place on the throne, for he is now the new king of Windsor. Wilfred walked over to the throne and took a seat, pondering the cruel twist of fate. His family, comrades, everything dear to him, it all slips through his fingers as he looked at his blood-soaked hands. His thoughts were interrupted when someone called to him. Wilfred called Cedric and asked him what he wants. Cedric informed him that Princess Alicia was expected to arrive soon. Wilfred rose from the throne to welcome his bride, with Cedric following closely behind. A few nobles within the castle were gossiping about how Wilfred stripped the Marquis of Sussex his title and property, even if the Marquis was a loyal retainer who protected the borders since the founding, and that even loyal vassals aren't sparred if they oppose Wilfred. As Wilfred and Cedric walked past the gossiping nobles, they chose to ignore them. Cedric urged Wilfred to be kind to the princess, and Wilfred planned to do so, because these days no women are even approaching Wilfred. Cedric also wanted him to stop using sharp words that could hurt, a habit that Wilfred was known for. Wilfred explained that he never means to hurt anyone, but somehow the people around him end up crying. Cedric told him that a woman's heart is a delicate thing, and the basic rule is to avoid hitting the core and to wrap your word in layers of gentleness, and advised that when she talks, even if it seems unimportant, just nod and show you care. Wilfred finds this insincere, but Cedric told him that in romantic situations, being too sincere can actually be harmful. He added that men and women perceive kindness differently, and Wilfred thinks that's a daring opinion. Cedric kept teaching Wilfred. He said that 9 out of 10 women would feel upset if a man was as honest as Wilfred thinks he should be. Wilfred had no idea about this, but Cedric explained that women don't really want advice, they just want simple words of affirmation. This made Wilfred think and wonder if they are just genuine fools, which caused Cedric to lose his cool. But Wilfred finds it hard to believe that all women in the world are like that, and it might be tough to accept. Cedric agreed that there are smart women too, but when it comes to the relationship between him and women, things seem to change. Wilfred also heard that love makes people foolish. Cedric explained that's not exactly what he meant, and it's more about the delicate nature of male-female relationships. He reminded Wilfred to be gentle with the princess and treat her like fragile porcelain. Wilfred agreed that he would try his best. After all, their alliance with Bao'e is crucial, and Cedric has faith in him. Wilfred looked at Cedric. He can't really blame him for how Cedric feels because he probably lacks something important as a person. Ever since he was a kid, he was always direct and harsh towards others. He doesn't know what exactly is missing, but if he had to guess, maybe it's a human heart. That might be why he can make calm and rational decisions, even during the war 3 years ago. Thanks to that trait, he was able to protect the land with his troops. Now, all he can do is feel sorry for his bride as he wonders if someone like him can truly be with someone, or if he can even build a good relationship or make his bride happy. Until he can fill this emptiness, those thoughts won't come true, and somehow that thought felt certain. Wilfred and Cedric arrived outside to see a line of soldiers on the path, and a carriage where Princess Alicia is on the other side looking at him, wondering if he was the man she was meant to marry. Chancellor Richard had informed her that the person standing there was Wilfred Ivan Windsor, the King of Windsor. Wilfred stared straight at the carriage, leaving Alicia in shock. She felt scared by his intense gaze. Just a month ago, she was an ordinary girl, but then the king summoned her and told her she was going to Windsor. He told her she was a true princess by blood, shared that her mom used to work as a maid for the queen consort, and when the queen discovered the affair, she threw her mom out. His daughters didn't want to marry the demon king, and he recalled that he has a child with the maid, who is Alicia. Alicia tried to say no, but the king told her that she couldn't refuse and threatened her about her family, asking if she cared about them. Alicia felt terrified and thought about her family, and that day Alicia can't say anything at all. Back at the Windsor castle, Wilfred begins to walk towards the carriage where Alicia is, and he has a really scary vibe. She felt like he would hurt her for even the smallest mistake. She looked really scared as she sat down, and if she could run away, she would do it right then. But she promised to protect her siblings and swore at her mother's grave that as long as she is alive, she will reunite with her family and that she will not die in her father's place. She gathered her courage and tried to get out of the carriage as Wilfred approached with his threatening presence. Alicia told the Chancellor that she needed time to prepare herself, but he pushed her, causing her to lose her balance. This shocked her because she was about to fall, so she closed her eyes, bracing for the impact. But when she opened her eyes, she saw Wilfred with his arms wide open, trying to catch her as she fell. Unfortunately, her elbow hit Wilfred's head, surprising Cedric and the other soldiers, even Wilfred himself. Wilfred fell to the ground because of the sudden impact. Alicia couldn't believe what just happened. She was left speechless and in shock. Wilfred is still holding his head, and Alicia knelt down to ask him if he was okay. She apologized and explained that it wasn't her intention for this to happen. Now, she's overthinking everything, feeling like her life is ruined. She wants to die and start fresh as panic sets in. Cedric and the other soldiers ran to Wilfred, asking if he was hurt and if they should call a doctor. But Wilfred told them not to make a scene. He said he just tripped because of the heat and that it wasn't serious as he stood up. Wilfred looked at Alicia and asked if she was hurt anywhere. But Alicia felt like her soul had left her body because the look Wilfred was giving her felt like a grim reaper staring at her. She remembered a childhood moment when she was with her mom and their carriage was stopped by a group of scary men. Her mom told them that she would pay them if they let them go, but the scary man looked at them and judged her mom and her clothes, claiming that they looked like they didn't have much. He thought selling them would get him more money as the man grabbed her mom's arm. They tried to fight back and shouted for help, but the scary man said no one was coming for them. Her mom realized that the guards with them were already dead, and the man told them that both of them belongs to them. He grabbed her hands and lifted her up while her mother pleaded with him to stop hurting her child. She cried out for help as the man lifted her using her one arm. He slapped her and he told her to be quiet, but that only made her cry even louder. She couldn't stop crying because of the pain on her cheeks. The man got annoyed and said it was time for her punishment, promising to keep hitting her until she stopped crying, making sure her body would remember it. Her mom looked terrified at the man as he raised his hand to hit Alicia again, when suddenly they heard groans from other people. Alicia looked over and saw a man in a black coat, and it was Wilfred when he was still young. He told them that he heard a commotion and here he found bandits. The bandits got furious at him for hurting their comrades and charged at him, but he easily dodged them and sliced them down. The other bandits attacked him too, but he killed each one without breaking a sweat. The man holding Alicia couldn't believe what he was witnessing. He was shocked that the young man had no feelings at all and he's treating killing as a chore. Wilfred walks up to the carriage, but the bandit warned him not to get any closer and to drop his sword, or he would kill young Alicia if he did. However, young Wilfred didn't stop, and asking why would he throw away his sword for someone he didn't even know. Wilfred pointed his sword at the bandit, saying that he wasn't afraid of him. Young Alicia shook with fear as Wilfred raised his sword, making them regret all they want in hell, while young Alicia fainted, thinking that she saw a reaper. Back in the present, they asked her if she was all right. She told them she was fine, as fit as a fiddle, and that there was nothing wrong at all while dusting off her clothes. Then, out of nowhere, the Chancellor made her bow her head and apologized to Wilfred, saying that the princess had acted inappropriately, even though the Chancellor was the one who pushed her without other people knowing. Wilfred believed it was just a minor accident and that they didn't need to worry, so they could lift their heads. Chancellor Richard expressed his gratitude to Wilfred, and Wilfred mentioned that he wanted to move forward with the ceremony. However, when he looked at Alicia, he saw that she was trembling, and he thought that if this was how it began, they were in for a bumpy ride. He thinks Alicia is a pathetic girl, and because of royal politics, she had to live among commoners instead of being a child of the queen. He stared at her and asked if she was scared of him. Alicia was taken aback. She panicked and thought she had to say something. If Wilfred was the Grim Reaper from her past, saying the wrong thing might get her killed this time. She suddenly recalled her mom's advice from when she was little, that she shouldn't let her emotions dictate her choices. Her mother called her a scaredy cat, but she explained that there are two kinds of scary people. There are genuinely nice ones, and then there's the devil who approaches with a friendly smile and a sweet voice. However, truly kind people can sometimes have unexpectedly serious expressions, just like the boy with black wings who rescued them and her stepfather. If Alicia learned how to tell the difference, she will find happiness and won't have to be scared anymore. Just take a good look at the person to see who you are talking to. She glanced at Wilfred and said sorry that she lost her composure. Wilfred looked back at her, and it seemed like he scared people without even trying. He noticed that even though Alicia was smiling, her hands were shaking, and it's always been like that even with other people. He thought that she might have heard a lot about him, and her reactions were normal, so she didn't need to worry. Wilfred smiled, but there was a touch of sadness in his eyes. Alicia was in awe. She even asked herself what she's doing, and what kind of effect has he even had on her. Wilfred hasn't done anything wrong. He even helped her when she was about to fall, and yet here she was, panicking. Wilfred believes that if he could, he would send her back to her family, but this marriage is crucial for the future of the whole nation. As he gazes at Alicia, her absence from public view is convenient, yet the official connection between Windsor and Baroe is what truly counts. He called Cedric and informed him that it appears the princess is unwell, and unfortunately, they will have to cancel the wedding ceremony. Alicia was surprised by what she heard. She tried to get their attention, and Wilfred looked back at her, asking what was wrong. She panicked again when she saw his eyes, but she reminds herself that girls need courage, and even if he is the Grim Reaper, he still saved her. She told herself she wasn't scared and that now was the time to be strong. She assured Wilfred that she was fine now without showing any fear and asked him to continue with the ceremony, which shocked Wilfred. They entered the hall together, walking side by side, and people inside welcomed them. Alicia even waved at everyone. They stood in front of the altar as the ceremony continued. Wilfred found it amusing because no woman he had ever met looked at him like that before. Usually, they were scared like Alicia had been earlier or tried to flatter him to gain his power. It was always one of those two reactions, so this caught him off guard a bit. It felt new to him, and Wilfred finds her bride Alicia beautiful as he lifted her veil and kissed her on the top of her head. After the ceremony, Alicia somehow made it through, but now she's in a room, her mind wondering if they are actually going to do honeymoon things. Since that's part of being a husband and wife, she started imagining what could happen tonight. She felt nervous thinking about what was coming. Alicia's not mentally prepared, she doesn't even have a boyfriend, and if it's wedding night, it means something else. The door swung open suddenly, and as he called out Alicia's name, Wilfred walked into the room wearing his robe. Alicia felt nervous as she looked at him, but Wilfred reassured her not to be scared because he didn't plan to do anything, and he sat down on the couch. Alicia glanced at him and saw Wilfred's strange smile again. She found the courage to ask him if it was really okay when he said he didn't intend to do anything. She remembered the maid telling her that tomorrow night they would check the bed sheets for blood. Any child born after that must be verified against the princess's chastity exam to confirm the child carries Wilfred's bloodline. This shocked Alicia. She couldn't believe what she was hearing, but it's a common custom among aristocrats who value lineage. Alicia shared everything with Wilfred, and even though it was frightening, she promised to do her best. If it was something that had to happen, she would endure it. But Wilfred never really intended to do anything in the first place, and Alicia wondered why. She asked him if it was because Sir was too afraid, but he told her that it had nothing to do with that. She saw that all the women at the ceremony today were full of life and beautiful, while she felt like just a plain girl. She thought it might be because she wasn't his type, but he said that wasn't true. He found her somewhat pretty, but he wouldn't call her a great beauty. Alicia felt upset when he said reasonably pretty, but the look he gave her showed he was being truthful. Wilfred went on to say that there was something important he needed to share with her. Alicia became curious when she saw the serious expression on his face. He told her that he didn't plan on having any kids with her, and he knew that made him a bad husband. He apologized for that in advance and bowed his head. Alicia felt a wave of panic. She urged him to lift his head, but Wilfred replied that what he had told her should have been said before their marriage. He claimed that telling her now was almost like breaking a contract, but the alliance with Baoe was crucial for his nation, and their marriage had to take place. Alicia shook her head, still in a state of panic. She understood and accepted the situation, asking him once more to raise his head, but he told her he hadn't even explained why yet. Still, she insisted that she didn't need to know and that she forgave him anyway. She was still panicking because she was just a commoner until recently, and now a king was bowing his head to her. Her heart couldn't handle it. Wilfred finally lifted his head, and Alicia could finally feel at ease. He complimented her on having a really generous heart, but out of curiosity, she asked that kings are meant to have children, right? He looked bothered by that question, which shocked Alicia quite a bit. He thinks that if she wants her kid to be a king, she must be out of her mind. To him, no one in their right mind would want their child to live a life like his. 9 years ago, a war broke out with their neighbor, Amal, and he was sent to the front lines because he carried royal blood, and he was just a sacrificial symbol to boost morale. He fought and fought and fought, but many lives were lost and they scraped out a victory in the end. The cursed blood dragged him into yet another storm of chaos. Cedric told him that the kingdom won't survive like that, and the one only person who can do something is Wilfred. And so, he ended up having to kill his own half-brother, and that blood only brought him nothing but pointless battles. All that was left was an empty throne, and he would never, even in his dreams, want to pass this on to his child. He told her that people who wants to make their kids into kings are everywhere. They will kill their own family without any hesitation, but Wilfred refused to let his own child kill and be killed over a throne. Alicia recalled what Chancellor Richard had told her. Wilfred was attacked many times by his own family. In the end, he took the throne by killing his half-brother. She might be royalty too, but the idea of killing her own siblings is unimaginable, and she would never do that. She finally understood why he wouldn't have any children. He truly feels sorry for her. He knows it won't be easy, but he hopes she can accept it. He promises to do everything he can to make up for it, asking her sincerely. He bows his head again, and she seems flustered by his gesture, but she tells him that she doesn't mind at all. He can finally let out a sigh of relief. But Alicia wondered about the next king. Luckily, Wilfred has a younger brother. His brother might be a bit unreliable, but with someone like Cedric supporting him, it should work out. She sees Wilfred as a man who became king but doesn't feel connected to the throne. She spoke, making him look at her, and mentioned that she heard he took the throne by force, carried out purges one after another, and became feared. But she wants to know why he accepted being the king of the country. Wilfred stared at her while pouring a glass of alcohol. She went on to say that even though he clearly disliked it, he didn't really want the crown, and that is understandable. He interrupted her, saying that the country was already in bad shape, trapped by over 1,000 years of traditions and problems. No one could take bold actions, and corruption was everywhere, leading to decline being unavoidable. The last two rulers only indulged in luxury and dragged the nation down. He understood that the people were putting their hopes in him, and everyone wanted change, but there was no one else to turn to, and that was all there was to it. Alicia looked at him in wonder, knowing that it was clear he never chose this out of desire. Even if he was disliked by the public, if it brought joy to the people living there, he was only doing it because he had to, viewing it as something he must face. It was a weight he had to carry, as she observed Wilfred gazing out the window with pity. She believes that Wilfred is not afraid to let go the lesser for the greater good, and he likely carries that ruthless kind of resolve, but that's not all there is to him. As she gazed at him, Wilfred was staring out the window, and Alicia smiled at him while moving closer, closing the gap between them. Wilfred seemed surprised by her action as they locked eyes. Alicia then asked him, despite what people said, if he was actually a really kind person. Wilfred looked at her, surprised. He seems really confused, and Alicia thinks he just has this intense look and vibe that makes him super scary. His way of talking is really blunt and awkward, which makes it hard to get what he means. But deep down, he's definitely a genuine and sincere person who cares a lot about others, a truly kind person. Wilfred looked at her and suddenly started laughing, covering his mouth as he did. Alicia freaked out, worried that she might have said something totally wrong because she doesn't understand the palace rules. Wilfred kept laughing and apologized, saying he just never thought anyone would call him kind. She pouted and insisted that he really is a kind person and that she didn't say anything weird. He disagreed, thinking it was strange because it's the first time in his life someone has said that to him. Usually, people say he's cold or heartless. She told him that those people just don't see him for who he really is, looking at him with pity. She knows Wilfred works hard for everyone, but no one gets him. They just find him scary, which is really sad. She wants to be the one who understands him, to see past his awkwardness and hard-to-read kindness. She can't say she loves him, not even by mistake, because she doesn't think he loves her either. At first, she was so scared of him, so she probably doesn't deserve to feel that way now. But even so, she's already his wife and smiled while looking at him. His face seemed much brighter as he held his drink and looked outside. He told her that he still thinks her view is a bit odd, but Alicia didn't mind. It's just her personal opinion. He thought that was fair enough. At first, he was worried, but now he feels really happy that she became his wife, which surprised Alicia. She blushed a little from what she heard. He jokingly said that whether she likes it or not, they will be together for a long time, and it's better to be liked than not. This left Alicia speechless and confused. He really thinks practically, but he doesn't understand women at all. Out of all the things he could say, he chose to say like it or not, when there are nicer ways to express things. In contrast, past. The castle is bustling with nobles enjoying a dance in the hall. Inside a room, a group of men were smoking and having a discussion. One man spoke about the distribution of the land to the nobles and commoners, 4 for the lords and 6 for the people, while another man questioned how anyone could rule land with such arrangements. The old man standing said they would be doomed at that point, and not following the rules would lead to harsh punishment. Even the Marquis of Sussex was banished, and they believe Wilfred is heartless. One man was upset, feeling that Wilfred doesn't realize how many hundreds of years they've served the Windsor royal family. He thinks Wilfred doesn't understand that the king exists because of them. They heard the wedding ceremony was really fancy. They said Wilfred doesn't care about the suffering of their vassals and is living in luxury all by himself. They find it totally disgraceful that he enjoys life without knowing the struggles his vassals face. They believe Wilfred isn't fit to be king and should give up the throne right away. They all agree but aren't sure what to do. They've already sent various women, but Wilfred shows no interest, and every assassin they sent gets killed. Now he's married to the Princess of Baoe, which only strengthens his rule, and even political pressure doesn't work anymore. They can't win a direct fight, even if they have more people, because Wilfred is incredibly strong in battle. Even with more troops, there's a weakness, another mysterious man said, but it's also his big flaw. If they hit there, Wilfred might fall apart. Wilfred doesn't understand human feelings, and all his rushed changes over the years have caused problems all over the kingdom. Something will trigger a collapse from within. A devilish aura surrounds that man, and he said the preparations are already set up. Back at the castle, Wilfred introduced Alicia to Cedric and the other palace workers as his wife. Alicia felt really nervous when she met them, stumbling over her words as she tried to make friends. She realized she had messed up right from the beginning and felt embarrassed for screwing up again. Cedric cleared his throat to introduce himself as the chief secretary. Alicia looked over at Cedric and thought that even though he is a man, he is really gorgeous, even at the ceremony. Wilfred told her that Cedric is his right-hand man, and if she needs help, she can always go to Cedric. Alicia suddenly smiled brightly, saying she had heard about Cedric's reputation, which made everyone go silent. A sudden burst of laughter interrupted the silence. Wilfred and Cedric were laughing together, trying to hold it in but failing because they found Alicia funny. Alicia felt somewhat embarrassed. Wilfred felt like that ever since Wilfred met her, he had been laughing more as he teased her. Still feeling shy, Alicia jokingly apologized for being a clumsy wife, but there was no need to say sorry since he meant it as a compliment, and he loved the idea of a home filled with laughter. Alicia felt annoyed by their teasing because they were the only ones laughing at her, and it felt one-sided. But Wilfred kept teasing her, saying he would never get bored with her around. Feeling sulky and irritated, Alicia suddenly realized that maybe he was warming up to her after all. Cedric looked surprised by how close they had become, noticing that they really connected in just one day. Alicia felt a bit sorry for them for making her worry again, but Wilfred explained that it was Alicia's personality that brought them closer. Alicia gave him a suspicious look, determined not to fall for his tricks again. Wilfred looked at her, curious about what tricks she meant, and she told him he was just trying to tease her and being mean. But he genuinely didn't understand what she was talking about, insisting he was just praising her. Cedric watched their playful argument unfold before him. He had known Wilfred for a long time, and seeing him casually talk to a woman like this was new. He smiled as he watched them interact. After talking to Cedric, Alicia and Wilfred strolled around the palace when someone called out to Wilfred, referring to him as brother. Wilfred was thinking about visiting him later, but he still introduced his wife, Alicia, to him. Alicia gave him a quick look as he introduced himself as Richard Aquitaine Windsor, who is Wilfred's younger brother. A bunch of maids were totally admiring Richard, and even Alicia was a bit surprised. Richard is kinda used to it because he thinks he's handsome too. Wilfred jumped in and said he would be worried if his wife started admiring another guy right in front of him, especially since she was staring at Richard for a long time. Alicia said she was staring because she thinks Richard looks a lot like Wilfred since they are brothers. The two brothers looked at each other, like they were trying to see if they really do look alike. She told them they do look alike, saying their eyes, nose shape, and mouth are super similar while praising them, but Wilfred disagreed and said he sees it the other way around, and even Richard agreed with him. She told them that the only real difference is in how they express themselves. She feels that Wilfred always has that grumpy look, and when she copied his expression, the maid seemed scared. Even Richard was nervous, but Alicia kept saying that even when Wilfred laughs, it's like a grin that can be a bit frightening. The maids looked like they lost all their color when she imitated Wilfred again. She believes that if he just lifted the corners of his mouth a bit when he laughed, it would look quite similar to how she smiles by raising the corner of her mouth. But there was just silence, and she was shocked when Wilfred suddenly laughed again. again. She panicked, thinking she might have said something wrong, but he calmed her down, saying there was nothing wrong and that her advice was actually good and he would remember it moving forward. Richard stared at both of them as if he was seeing something strange, and even the maids and the guard felt relaxed. He thought that the two had become closer. Wilfred proudly said it was all because of Alicia, but she disagreed, saying it was because Wilfred was kind and generous. Richard found it odd to hear someone call Wilfred kind, which made Alicia nervous, but Wilfred cut in, saying that since they were at least husband and wife, she could express her thoughts freely. Alicia believes that Wilfred is very kind, and that's how she sees him. Richard was surprised but soon understood the situation, feeling a bit embarrassed, and he was happy to see them getting along so well. He congratulates the both of them once again, and he's happy that his brother found a good partner. Richard feels a little jealous, and that if he were gonna take a partner he'd want someone who's compatible, but Wilfred advised that royal marriages are political as always, and Richard agreed. Shifting the conversation, Wilfred heard that Richard was performing well in his studies and his teachers praised him. Richard agreed that learning is enjoyable, and Wilfred complimented him, urging him to keep up the good work. If something were to happen to him, Richard would inherit the throne. Richard doesn't want to think about that, claiming the country still needs him. But Wilfred explains that whether he is needed or not, unexpected events can happen, and being ready is part of a king's duty. Richard still feels upset about it, but he nodded while looking down. A royal shouldn't show their feelings too easily, or others might take advantage of them. Richard quickly stood up straight, feeling more alert. Wilfred reminded him to always remember his role, but he was cut off by Richard's advisor, who wanted to talk. Wilfred turned to him and asked Duke Newman what he wanted to say, mentioning that he always welcomes honest words. The Duke explained that Richard might appear unreliable, especially from Wilfred's perspective. However, Richard's friendliness is his strength, and because of that, they want to support him. No matter how skilled someone is, one person cannot defeat 100, and they can help cover his weaknesses as his followers. Even the maids nodded in agreement. Wilfred considered this. The ability to engage others might be what they call a king's talent. Because of his tough ruling, people will react negatively and there will be disorder. And in that sense, Richard's potential as a mediator might be essential for the kingdom's future. If that's the case, Wilfred hoped they would keep supporting Richard. Wilfred said goodbye to them because he had another place to go. Richard said goodbye to him and turned to Alicia, wishing they could chat soon. Alicia agreed and said she was excited about it. Then, Wilfred and Alicia left. Alicia said that Richard is the really glamorous younger brother. Wilfred agreed, saying that unlike him, Richard is popular at court, and there are a lot of people saying things like, if only Richard were the king instead of him. Alicia looked at him when he said that, and he joked that if she was going to marry into the royal family, it might have been better if Richard had been the king. Alicia felt shocked and panicked, thinking that she is completely happy with Wilfred, but Wilfred reassured her that there's no need to flatter him. She clarified that it's not flattery, she prefers Wilfred because he's kind and a good person. But Wilfred lets out a sigh and doesn't believe her thoughts about him. Alicia pouts because Wilfred doesn't believe her. He thinks Richard is way nicer and a better person than he is. She looks like she's not sure, and Wilfred notices that she has doubts. She tells him she might be imagining things, but since he's going to be a future leader, she wants to share her honest thoughts. She asks him not to tell Richard, and Wilfred agrees to keep it a secret. She said that if she's going to be honest, Richard seems like a spoiled rich kid. Wilfred laughed at how straightforward she is. She felt embarrassed and said sorry, but he told her it was okay and maybe it's just because Richard was raised in a sheltered way. Alicia mentioned that her mom always said that challenges help a person to grow. Wilfred agreed and asked her what other things her mother shared with her. Alicia explained that people who are raised without facing any struggles don't really understand the pain of others. They often take everything for granted and lose their sense of gratitude, and it's actually better to go through tough times when you're young. Wilfred thought about this and realized those were really wise words, and her mom seems like a very wise person. Alicia smiled with pride, agreeing that her mom taught her a lot. Alicia also thought that Wilfred looked like someone who has experienced many hardships, which is probably why he takes on so many difficult responsibilities. He explained to her that even without trying hard, anyone can see that people are suffering at this moment. But she stared at him seriously and said that nobles are royals, and they usually don't care about commoners. Wilfred noticed Alicia's mood change and understood that nobles just aren't interested. Neither his dad nor his brother ever cared about the people, and a lot of nobles are the same way. Even with their fancy lives, paid for by the taxes of those same people. If you keep pushing the people down for too long, they will fight back. They aren't uneducated or dumb, but they just can't see such an obvious truth. Nobles really don't care about how regular people live. Alicia cut in while he was thinking and said this is why she believes Wilfred is nicer than Prince Richard. Wilfred can't believe they are talking about this again, and Alicia confidently states that this is one thing she won't change her mind about. He finds her surprisingly stubborn. Yet, he thinks it's interesting that Alicia can call him kind without hesitation, even though most people are scared of him. It's really strange and amusing. When Wilfred got there, Cedric greeted him and asked if everything went well. Wilfred told him there were no issues. He finds Alicia to be a really funny person, and Cedric thinks Wilfred has developed a fondness for her. Wilfred mentioned that he has never met anyone like her before, and he finds that really refreshing. Cedric still thinks that if Alicia continues to make mistakes like she did in the past, it could harm the kingdom's reputation. But Wilfred defended her, saying it's just a matter of gaining experience, and Alicia hasn't had much ladylike education to start with. Cedric finds it offensive to send an illegitimate daughter raised in the city, as if they are some sort of second-rate people. The Kingdom of Windsor has a proud history of 1,000 years, and being looked down upon by a country that is not even a century old is disgraceful. However, Wilfred doesn't mind. He believes in the idea of turning bad luck into good luck. He thinks a quiet, ordinary princess wouldn't have been right for him anyway, and he told Cedric to set up some training for Alicia since she needs to learn how to be a lady right away, but Cedric has already taken care of it. As the king's advisor, he was really quick, but Cedric believes that starting over can be pretty hard, though there's not much to be done about it. From what Wilfred has noticed these last few days, Alicia isn't stupid, she's actually quite strong and will find a way to get through it. Cedric was surprised because he thought Alicia was just a silly, nervous, and clumsy girl. He mentioned that Wilfred has a good opinion of her, but Wilfred is just saying what he thinks. He smiled, remembering how Alicia seems to live in a fantasy world, which will be tough for her in court. Cedric was shocked to see Wilfred smiling, but he smiled back too. Honestly, Wilfred didn't expect much, but maybe they could turn out to be a surprisingly happy couple. Cedric interrupted Wilfred's thoughts and put a stack of papers on the table, saying they were from the intelligence division. These papers contained reports about nobles acting suspiciously. Wilfred clicked his tongue in annoyance, his expression turning dangerous as he found those nobles to be a real hassle. The people's fear of the king only increased with every cold and heartless purge. People saw heads on display, and along with the heads was a note saying that those individuals broke the law, imposed illegal taxes, and made the people suffer, leading to their death by decapitation, with their heads shown in public. A man even feels like someone is put on display every 3 days, and the guards are always patrolling the streets, almost like they are hunting for prey. It seems that no matter who you are, if you go against him, you're already finished. Others find this really scary and know they have to be careful not to be the next ones to get purged. At the castle, Alicia faced Wilfred about the rumors she had been hearing. Wilfred paused. He said that he had been thinking about it lately, that pretends to be scared, but she doesn't really understand what fear is. Alicia covered her mouth, wondering if she had asked something she shouldn't have. Wilfred found her funny and encouraged her to ask him anything. She felt a sense of relief. Wilfred then explained that many kings don't like rumors about them and often eliminate those who spread them more than she realizes. She looked confused but acknowledged she had heard similar stories. Wilfred tried to warn her that asking such questions could be risky, but Alicia naively replied that she knew he wouldn't do anything like that. Wilfred was surprised. He thought Alicia was too trusting, but she clarified that she carefully observes people before deciding to trust them and felt confident in her judgment. Wilfred joked that her eyes must have holes in them. Alicia was pouting and was shocked by what he said, thinking it was kind of harsh. She exclaimed that it had only been a week since they met, so how could Wilfred possibly know that about her? He replied that she keeps calling him a good person, which is why he disagrees, stating he is not a kind man. Every time he looks at his hands, he sees blood, and even if it's all for the sake of changing the kingdom, she has no idea how many lives he has taken. Alicia stared at him, wanting to respond, but found it annoying that he continued to dwell on that topic. She believes the king is a good person, but Wilfred thinks that's exactly what he means when he says her eyes are full of holes. He used her own words against her, questioning how she could know that after just 1 week. Alicia, however, stands firm, saying that a week is plenty of time to figure something like that out, and she actually knew from the very first day. Wilfred warned her to be careful about trusting people. Now that she's the official queen of the kingdom, she will meet all sorts of shady characters, including those who fake smiles to hide their true intentions and try to get close to her. He believes she can't just trust strangers after knowing them for only a day or two. Alicia tried to clarify that she isn't naive enough to trust people like that. Wilfred still doesn't accept it. He reminds her that she trusted him in just one day, but she clarified that it's because he has no hidden motives and has been completely honest with her from the beginning. He argued that maybe his honesty itself could be a lie, but Alicia believes that if she were going to lie, she would have thought of a better one. Wilfred remembered what he said on their wedding night and felt a little embarrassed. He recalled that even when he shared it with Cedric, Cedric was totally shocked, and if he was going to lie, he would have at least thought of something better than that. Alicia stands confidently in front of him, feeling proud that she pays attention to people, and that's why she believes Wilfred is a good person because she has a good eye for people. In the evening at the castle, Wilfred noticed Alicia holding a pot, so he asked her what it was. She replied that it was pot-au-feu because she finds the palace food is a bit too fancy for her, and she started craving something more familiar to her taste buds. He wondered if there were any chefs around the palace at night, but she told him that she made it herself and just borrowed the kitchen in the inner palace, which was really dusty, so cleaning it was a hassle. No one had used that kitchen since he became king, but he was surprised that she could actually cook. Alicia thought Wilfred was teasing her. She proudly explained that her mom made sure she learned all the housework, and that pot-au-feu is her mom's recipe and it's really tasty. Wilfred asked if he could join her, and she said yes because food always tastes better when shared with someone. He accepted the bowl of pot-au-feu and tasted it. His eyes got big when he tasted the yummy dish. Alicia felt really proud, and that her mom's recipe is unbeatable. Wilfred couldn't hide how much he enjoyed eating it, and the flavors really soaked into the ingredients well. The secret, Alicia explained, is to let it sit for 20 minutes after turning off the heat. Wilfred expressed his gratitude for the fantastic meal. It was truly delicious, and Alicia felt happy that he enjoyed it. He thinks the palace soups are nice too, but if he had to eat one thing every day, he'd pick the pot-au-feu. Alicia thinks that if he's okay with it, she'd be glad to cook for him anytime. He felt pleased about this, knowing that even if the food she made is cold, it would still taste good, making it perfect for a late-night snack. Alicia noticed he often works late into the night, but he honestly thinks he'd rather take a break at least when he's with her. Alicia understands how hard he works, but if he pushes himself too much, he'll get really tired. However, if he doesn't do the paperwork, it will just keep piling up with no end in sight. If he had the chance to take it easy, he definitely would. Alicia wondered if he could pass some of his work to someone else. However, most of the officials got their jobs through connections, and they are just beginning to set up a real exam system to find skilled new hires. It will take around a year for them to be trained well enough to manage things independently, so he is stuck like this for at least another year. She can't believe what she heard. If he continues to work like that for so long, it will surely damage his health. But there's nothing he can do. If he doesn't do it, everything stops, and time won't wait for anyone. Alicia is worried that he might collapse from overworking and what might happen next. He looked at her with disapproval, because even though she knows how capable and strong he is still human, and there's a limit to everything no matter how strong he is. Her mom used to say that instead of working non-stop, taking breaks every now and then actually makes you more efficient in the long run, and pushing yourself every day just makes you less effective. Wilfred finally understood that Alicia was right. Soldiers who are overworked become weak. Without enough rest, they can't perform well when it matters most, and he learned this the hard way during battles. Alicia believes he should take at least one day off each week. He closed the book he was reading and decided to rest. Leaning back on the couch, he planned to take the night off, and immediately felt his body grow heavy. He had been pushing himself too hard, and the exhaustion had built up. Right now, the stability of the kingdom of Windsor Tars barely holding together, relying on his strength and fear. He shuts his eyes and sighed, thinking that if he were to collapse, even by some strange chance, the whole kingdom could fall into chaos. Alicia looked at him and heard him snoring. She was shocked that he fell asleep so quickly. He must have been very tired. But sleeping in a place like that couldn't be good for him, and she didn't have the courage to wake him up. Gathering her strength, she tried to lift him, hoping he wouldn't wake up. She grunted as she attempted to lift him, but he was heavier than she thought. Still, she did her best to at least get him to his bed. Just as she laid him down, they lost their balance, and Wilfred fell on top of her, but he was still sound asleep. She turned him onto his side and began to pat him while singing a lullaby to help him stay asleep. All she had to do was cover him with a blanket, but then suddenly Wilfred groaned and pulled her close, which surprised Alicia. He was still asleep, but he was hugging her tightly with his face buried in her chest. Alicia felt her cheeks get warm from their physical contact. She tried to wake Wilfred, but he was still asleep. She thought he must be really tired, so instead of disturbing him, she covered them both with the blankets and waited for him to wake up. When morning arrived, a surprised Wilfred woke up from his deep slumber. He couldn't believe what was happening. Alicia was still sleeping next to him. He lifted her hand to sit up and figure out what was going on. He couldn't remember anything after their conversation the night before, so he must have just dozed off. Alicia was kind enough to take care of everything, and since he was still fully dressed, it was clear that nothing happened. He realized he must have been really exhausted. It was unacceptable that he didn't wake up while someone was holding him. If it had been someone with bad intentions, who knows what could have occurred. He heard some noises from Alicia, and it seemed like she was dreaming about food, which surprised Wilfred but also made him smile. He thought she was such a unique girl. At his office, Wilfred was in a bad mood, complaining that he couldn't understand her at all. Cedric, who was clueless, asked if something was on his mind. He might not be much help, but he was willing to listen if Wilfred wanted to share. Wilfred agreed and wanted to hear Cedric's opinion. Cedric found it odd because Wilfred never relied on anyone before, so he wondered what kind of problem this was. Finally, Wilfred wanted to hear Cedric's thoughts because he always ended up losing arguments with his wife, which left Cedric dumbfounded. Cedric can't believe what Wilfred is saying. Wilfred explained that he just can't win an argument with his wife. Hearing this again, Cedric felt like he was listening to someone who was totally in love and bragging about it. But there's no way that the fierce battle demon king could be like that. Still, Wilfred told him that he takes pride in being good with words, but lately, Alicia has won every single argument. The things she says sound like they belong in kids' games, and he finds it really strange. Cedric also thought about it. It's hard to believe that Wilfred keeps losing debates, and Wilfred can't understand it, not one bit. It's almost like she's using some weird spell. Cedric felt uneasy thinking about how serious this is because for Alicia to be so clever and sharp with her words, it makes him rethink what he thinks about her. He remembered the first time Wilfred and Alicia met and how Alicia greeted him. He thinks Alicia's trick is pretending to mess up so that people like her, then she gets into their good books. Even the tough king and the officials she's talked to have grown fond of her, saying she's friendly and easy to chat with. If all of this is planned out, they might have let a cunning vixen into the royal court. From then on, they need to pay close attention to what she does, and he will never look down on her again. On another note, Alicia sneezed, almost like a hint that someone is saying things about you when you're not around. In the castle's garden, the maids are chatting with one another. They are discussing the latest head that has been displayed at the castle gates. One maid asked who it was this time, and it turns out it was Sir Alan. The maid was really shocked to hear about Sir Alan, the royal purveyor who got beheaded. He always had such a gentle smile and was so kind. They believe it was a false accusation. Maybe it's because Alan was actually handsome, which made the other maid feel uneasy about the petty reason. The maid with her hair down was about to keep talking about the king's left eye. Suddenly, they heard a rustling sound. It was Princess Alicia. The maids freaked out, trying to explain when Alicia came closer to ask what was going on. The maids quickly said it was nothing to trouble the princess with, and they decided to leave. Alicia watched the maids walk away. She thought that Wilfred's popularity had hit rock bottom already, even though he worked so hard for the realm. A memory popped into her head, and she screamed, startling everyone around her. She remembered that the other day their conversation had gone off track, and she completely forgot to ask about the truth behind those rumors that Wilfred is randomly doing purges. When someone shouted to her, asking what was wrong since she screamed, the maid from Baoe who had come to Windsor with her came over. Alicia said she was just surprised by an insect, but the maid scolded her, saying that as a queen consort, she shouldn't raise her voice so carelessly, as it would bring shame to Baoe. Alicia apologized, but in her thoughts, she wasn't really sorry. The maid continued, saying she heard Alicia's relationship with the king was going well for now, but if she kept acting this way, Wilfred would eventually lose his patience. She asked her to try harder, for her family's sake. Alicia looked at the maid seriously, thinking that the maid didn't need to remind her about her family. They always drag her family into everything, and they are really awful people. You can't trust rumors. King Bai was known as a kind, family-loving ruler with a good reputation, but in reality, he is a horrible man who would even threaten his own daughter by taking her family hostage. The king of Bai loves to show how hard he works for the people, but the truth is, the people's lives haven't improved. Meanwhile, Wilfred has the worst reputation both at home and abroad. He burned tens of thousands alive in the enemy nation, killed his own older brother to take the throne, and since then, he has been feared as a tyrant who executes his retainers one after another. But really, he is a little clumsy, very honest, and a kind person. She is also there to help him with his work because the king is really dedicated to his job. Alicia remembered their previous discussion and noticed how dedicated Wilfred is, as he even allows written opinions from local officials and personally goes through each one. Wilfred finds it funny. What he's doing is like preparing for some future downtime. If he can spot a hidden talent, he can hand off the work and relax, but that's easier said than done. She knows he actually took on more work willingly, which shows his strong sense of responsibility. He can't trust anyone who isn't fully prepared to do the job. job. Typically, if you want to make life easier, you'd be open to compromise. She can't picture him as the kind of guy who would just cut someone off for disagreeing. There must be a reason for it. She said she had no choice but to ask him straight out. Someone called her name, and she glanced back to see Wilfred approaching her. He appeared cheerful, and it looked like he was enjoying a walk as well. What a nice coincidence. After they meet in the garden, Wilfred invites Alicia to have some tea. Alicia feels a bit intimidated by the beautiful tea set in front of her. Just one teacup could keep her family going for months. She starts to worry about breaking it, but when she examines it more closely, she realizes she was wrong about its cost. Her family could actually survive for 5 years on that cup, which makes her shake from nervousness. She then looks at Wilfred, wondering if it's okay for him to take a break from work. He tells her it's no problem at all, and that taking breaks actually helps him work better than if he just kept going without stopping. He reminds her that she was the one who said that. Alicia appreciates his kindness, but she wonders if it's really okay for him to spend his important break time with someone like her. He insists that talking with her is a good way to relieve stress. He thinks she's a bit odd, which makes chatting with her enjoyable. Alicia felt like she heard something unkind, so she forced a smile, even though she was a bit annoyed. She remembered how Wilfred called her eccentric, which felt like he was calling him crazy. But deep down, she knows he meant it as a compliment, even if it feels like she's being treated like a rare animal. Still, she enjoys spending time with him, especially if it helps Wilfred relax. She wants to ask him something, and he said he would answer what he could. He didn't promise to answer everything, and that awkward honesty is so typical of him. She starts by asking if he remembers what she asked him earlier about the rumor going around the court. He tries to recall the day she mentioned, asking if it's about the reputation issue. She explained that the conversation got sidetracked with a debate about him being a good person, and she never got to hear the truth. He finally remembers and admits that he can't stop thinking about it. She directly asks him for the truth. He puts his hands together and admits he hasn't checked every rumor, but if she's talking about the purging of people, that part is true. She flinches when their eyes meet, and told him that she's aware of that rumor. She understands from the king's presence that he isn't just a kind person. If needed, he can kill without hesitation, and he definitely has a cold, ruthless side too. He was really worried about how she had been doing lately, but he felt relieved that she understood that much. She pouts when he teases her, telling him not to underestimate her. But Wilfred can't figure out what the issue is. Alicia shouted that it was about his reputation. She's upset that everyone is making Wilfred the bad guy in their stories. Wilfred was shocked by her reaction. He explained that if you go against someone's wishes, people will fear you, hate you, and talk behind your back. And since he got rid of someone, it's normal to be seen as the villain. She suddenly stood up from her chair, furious because you're only a villain if you kill someone who hasn't done anything wrong. Wilfred was stunned. Alicia went on to say that she heard the maids gossiping about how Wilfred executed someone named Alan. She asked if Alan was a good person because the public thinks he killed him out of jealousy since Alan was good looking. He also remembered Alan, the court merchant. It was news to him that people believed he executed Alan just for being handsome. Wilfred chuckled and started laughing. He found the idea quite funny. But Alicia was still very worried, telling him not to take it lightly, and that in just a week, she could tell he wasn't the kind of person who would kill someone just because they opposed him. She shook with anger and frustration. He's amazed that her sparkling view of hers about him is still going strong. She blushed at his comment and started calling him out for teasing her. He quickly apologized if he hurt Alicia's feelings and didn't mean to make fun of her. She pouted, feeling like he was playing with her emotions, and was annoyed that he wasn't taking the issue seriously. He looked at her and said that he really didn't mean it like that, but Alicia was looking at her with annoyance. And if anything, he felt a little envious. She didn't understand what he was saying and thought he was being sarcastic. He thought about how she must have been loved by her parents when she was growing up. She was taken aback. That's what Cedric told her. He said that Wilfred had spent his whole childhood in the borderlands, where his father ignored him and his mother had a mental breakdown when he was still young, passing away when he was 10. She also had times when it was just her and her mom, but whenever things got tough, her mom would comfort her with kindness. And whenever she was upset, her mom would give her gentle advice. Right now, just knowing her mom was watching over her made her fears go away and gave her courage. But Wilfred probably never had that. He never had anything like that at all. She pressed her hands against her chest, feeling sorry for Wilfred. Wilfred thinks that he was about to change the topic again. He explained that it's true he doesn't discriminate against anyone, and he only punishes those who break the law very strictly, and he was the one who created those laws. In that way, people could say he punished them because their actions went against against his will. She felt defeated. But she's starting to understand that Wilfred believes he's a criminal, and the fact that he kills people is an undeniable truth. He neither thinks he's forgiven for it nor even wants to be forgiven. He sees it as something unavoidable, something natural. When he glanced at Alicia, he was surprised to notice how sad she looked. She felt this way because Wilfred kept saying really upsetting things. Wilfred seemed unaware and was just thinking. He didn't realize what he said that hurt her, and Cedric mentioned that he was missing something called tact. If he had said something that upset her, he would want to say sorry. But those comments made Alicia really angry. She slammed her hands on the table, causing the tea set to rattle, and Wilfred was stunned. She told him that this wasn't about her, they were talking about him. The truth is, he has taken too many lives, and that's a fact that can't be denied. But she could see that he felt a strong sense of guilt about it. He tried to explain that he didn't really feel any guilt. But still angry, Alicia interrupted him, telling him to be quiet and let her finish what she was saying. Wilfred was shocked. She pointed her finger at him and said that he is really just a cleaner, especially a toilet cleaner, she shouted. He pictured himself with an apron, a mask, and a bucket, and he was surprised by her comments. The maids are observing their disagreement. Alicia mentioned that Wilfred might not know, but cleaning is actually quite difficult, especially when it involves toilets. She recalled that at home, they would rotate the chores, and honestly, she would think how those things smell so awful, and even with a cloth, she didn't want to touch them. Just remembering how it felt makes her feel sick, and she can't remember how many times she wished she could give the job to her younger siblings. She did do it once, but she got scolded for it. In both Bao'e and Windsor, the palace bathrooms are super clean. The hallways, the windows, and the furniture are all spotless, with not a single speck of dust in sight. She also saw that the dishes and clothes are clean, and the reason nobles can live so comfortably is because of the people who clean every day. He agreed, but she's really mad about how those same nobles look at the cleaners like there's something dirty. Wilfred remembers seeing this scene many times. Alicia thinks it's totally wrong because the cleaners are doing the hard and annoying work for the nobles. They should at least be grateful to them instead of staring at them weirdly, she yells. They look directly at each other. He thinks everything she said makes sense, but he doesn't understand how it relates to him. Her story jumped around so much that he lost track, so she tried to explain again and believes that Wilfred is like the country's cleaner. She admits she's not very smart and doesn't know much about politics, but she thinks a country has all kinds of problems, with bad people and invaders from outside. For everyone in the country to be happy and safe, someone has to handle those bad people. But that's a tough job that nobody wants to do, and he agrees with that. The country's systems and institutions become outdated, and too much waste accumulates. If someone tries to change it, those with vested interests will make a big deal out of it, and in the end, you might have to risk your life. It would be easier to just go along with those vested interests and live in comfort. For an individual, that's the peaceful and smart way to live. However, the price of delaying action is that the current Windsor Kingdom has turned into a mansion filled with garbage. He was taken aback by her comments, and even the maids around them looked shocked. They couldn't believe Alicia would compare the king's duties to toilet cleaning. He was stunned by her remarks. Even the faces of the maids around them grew pale. They are so shocked how Alicia can compare what the king does for the kingdom to cleaning toilets. But Wilfred started to laugh and admitted that his job really is like cleaning toilets. And since it involves cleaning toilets, Alicia understands that it's not something that can be resolved with just simple words. Wilfred looked her in the eye and told her that sometimes, it might even mean taking someone's life. She flinched but nodded in agreement. She realizes that there will be moments when Wilfred has no choice but to do it. Without looking away, she stared directly into his eyes. Even though he is someone who has killed tens of thousands, that intrigued Wilfred. Out of the blue, she said that her mom becomes really scary when she's angry, which surprised Wilfred. Sometimes, she worries that if she does certain things, her mom would be furious, so she considers stopping. But what Wilfred does is pretty much the same, and he agreed that there is some truth to that. He understands that the purges he conducts have that purpose, as people tend to choose the easier path, but to correct the discipline that has become corrupt, a figure that people will fear is necessary. She crossed her arms and complained that someone who takes on such a tough job for everyone is being hated and looked at weirdly, and she just can't accept that. He chuckled at what she said, looking at her and wondering why he sometimes feels strange when he talks to her. Honestly, what she says sounds like a fantasy, which makes him feel tickled and uncomfortable, but not in a bad way. Suddenly, he felt a dangerous vibe around him, like a weapon aimed right at him. He glanced back at the garden and saw a shiny object flying straight towards them, but it was aimed at Alicia. He looked at her and quickly ran towards her, finally realizing that the target wasn't him. He reached for Alicia, but she had no clue what he was doing. When the arrow struck his shoulder, it shocked Alicia. He winced in pain but managed to hug Alicia and dodge several arrows. He carried her behind the gazebo, and then the arrows stopped. Alicia looked at him with worry, and he wondered if she was safe. He felt relieved to see that she was okay. His shoulders started to hurt, and it felt like his heart was aching and he couldn't breathe. Alicia kept calling his name, looking like she was about to cry. He thought there might be poison on the arrows, and it felt like this was the end for him. But it didn't matter because at least he was able to protect her. However, he knew that if he died, Alicia would blame herself, and that was the only thing that scared him. He closed his eyes and felt himself sinking into darkness. Wilfred slowly opened his eyes and saw the ceiling above him, realizing he was alive. A regular person might feel happy in this moment, but he felt nothing in his heart, thinking he must be broken as he stared at his hands. Alicia, who was sitting on a couch, heard him and flinched. She rushed to his bedside, relieved that Wilfred was awake, insisting he should still rest. He attempted to open and close his hands to check his body, but he thought it might be the after effects of the poison. His limbs felt heavy, and he couldn't put much strength into them, but he believed he would be back to work soon. He heard groaning next to him, and when he looked over, he was shocked to see Alicia crying hard. He asked her what was wrong, and she just said she was relieved he was safe while continuing to cry. He was taken aback and speechless. He realized she might have stayed up all night watching over him. He tried to bow his head, feeling bad for making her worry. He couldn't understand his feelings. He made someone cry for him, yet he felt happy. Alicia reassured him that he didn't need to apologize because it was her fault he got hit by an arrow. Wilfred tried to explain, hoping she would stop blaming herself, saying he simply misjudged the situation and thought he was the target. She panicked, saying it was because she was too slow and that it wasn't his fault. But he told her she hadn't had any training, so there was no way she could have reacted quickly. She was really thankful to him, saying if he hadn't saved her, she might be dead by now. Wilfred knew that even he, who had some resistance to poison, was knocked out by it, and if Alicia had been hit by that arrow, she would have died. He felt annoyed and couldn't imagine what would have happened to her. It looks like he has feelings for Alicia that he didn't even know about. He tightened his fists and promised her that he would catch the person responsible right away, including the one pulling the strings. And he will ensure that everyone knows what happens to anyone who dares to hurt you. Wilfred looked like he was ready to hurt someone. The maid and Alicia were frightened by what he said. Later that day, Cedric rushed into the room. Wilfred was sitting on the bed with work files in his hands. Cedric felt relieved that Wilfred was okay, and that was all that mattered. He mentioned that Wilfred had been unconscious for 3 days, but it seems Cedric managed to survive once again. As usual, Wilfred felt like he had nothing but bad luck. Cedric thought there was no hope for Wilfred at that moment. The doctor said the arrow was covered in Zahak's poison. Wilfred remembered that poison, which could kill even large animals with just a tiny amount. Cedric felt proud that Wilfred survived such a thing, but Wilfred said he owed it to the assassins from his childhood. However, Cedric knew this was not a joke. Wilfred understood that too, but he found it somewhat funny since they went to such lengths to use something as dangerous as Zahak. The rare giant serpent is only found in the Baraway kingdom. He recalled a smuggler named Alan, the royal supplier, who the public thought was executed for being handsome, and Cedric confirmed that. But secretly, Alan was involved in drug smuggling and human trafficking, a terrible merchant of the worst kind, and they remembered hearing that among the seized goods was a Zahak. Cedric remembered that too, and he couldn't picture anyone else who would smuggle such a creature. He had already sent the intelligence agency to the garden to investigate. Wilfred was impressed by how quickly Cedric worked. Cedric said that if he couldn't manage something so easy, he wouldn't be good enough to be Wilfred's right hand. Wilfred asked Cedric if he thought Alan's strange death was also caused by Zahak, and it probably was. The symptoms of the poison looked like cardiac arrest, making it really hard to figure out if it was natural or if someone murdered him. Wilfred realizes this could be a way to silence Alan. But still, dying from the very thing he got himself was a silly way to go, though Cedric thinks it's a fitting end for a bad guy. Wilfred smirks, not agreeing but finding it funny. But if we are talking about villains, he is the biggest villain of the century. Cedric was about to say something when they heard a knock. A maid came in saying that the court doctor sent her to bring Wilfred's medicine. Cedric told her to just leave it there and go away because he and Wilfred were in the middle of an important talk. The maid put the medicine on the table and left. Cedric noticed something and walked over to the medicine she brought. He picked up a folded piece of paper and handed it to Wilfred. Wilfred opened it but was shocked by what he saw. He felt annoyed and unlucky, thinking he must have been born under a bad star as he handed the paper back to Cedric. Cedric stares at the paper, and right away his curious expression changed to one of total shock. He can't believe his eyes, because the person behind the attempted assassination of Princess Alicia is Richard Aquitaine Windsor, the younger brother of Wilfred. After realizing who the mastermind was, Wilfred changed his clothes and summoned some of his soldiers. 2 years ago, Wilfred and Richard met for the first time. Richard even expressed that it was a privilege to meet the hero of Amolda and that he was proud to call Wilfred his older brother. That was their first meeting, and Richard was like a little puppy. On that day, Wilfred called Richard for a specific reason, because at that moment, Richard was Wilfred's only living blood relative. Wilfred wanted to share something privately with him. Richard was shocked by the unexpected news. Wilfred began to explain to Richard that his mother was a commoner, while Richard's mother came from the Newman ducal family, meaning that by blood, Richard was more suited to be king than he was. Richard declared that he had no interest in the throne, but Wilfred told him that he didn't plan on having children, which meant Richard would inherit the throne. Richard found it hard to believe what he was saying, but Wilfred was serious and meant every word. Richard struggled to accept this sudden news. Wilfred asked him if he didn't want the throne, and Richard seemed hesitant, so Wilfred thought that if he didn't want it, he would just give it to someone else. But Richard stopped him, looking as if he was about to say something. He continued, saying that if Wilfred asked him whether he wanted to be king, he would admit that he did want to be king, as he was a man after all. But he had no desire to take it from his brother, not even a little bit. Just a few days ago, Wilfred had killed his own older brother, King John, and now Richard's caution in speaking carefully was a necessary trait for a king, which wasn't a bad thing. Wilfred understood what Richard meant, and if Richard wanted to be king, he suggested that he work for it, study hard, train well, and become stronger. When the moment arrives, if Richard has the traits of a real king, the crown will belong to him. Richard boldly declared that he will be the king that his brother can trust. Richard was the last brother Wilfred had in this world, and he found him really charming. He had big hopes for him. Wilfred wanted him to achieve his dreams and be happy if it was possible. And that's what Wilfred wished for, from the bottom of his heart. Currently, Wilfred reached for the door handle and opened it, revealing Richard and Duke Newman. Richard asked him what he was doing and why, but Wilfred looked at them with a fierce stare, making it clear they should know why he was there. Richard's face went pale, but Wilfred still couldn't believe that Richard was behind this. He hoped it was all Duke Newman's fault and that young Richard was just being used. But things rarely go as planned. He commanded his soldiers to hold Richard back. The soldiers apologized, but they had to follow the king's orders, even if he was the king's younger brother. Richard fought back, but he couldn't do anything. The soldiers pinned him down, and Duke Newman had to step in and ask what was happening. Wilfred brought up the poisoned arrow incident, asking Duke Newman if that sounded familiar. Duke Newman looked worried, trying to figure things out, asking if Prince Richard was the one responsible, and Wilfred confirmed it. Duke Newman wanted proof, and Wilfred explained that they had caught Alan smuggling Zahak poison, and when they looked into his clients, they found Clive, Richard's foster brother. When Richard heard Clive's name, his face went even whiter. Duke Newman glanced at him. Richard was trying to explain, but Wilfred went on to say that when they searched Clive's room right away, they discovered a vial of Zahak's poison. When they questioned Clive, he immediately admitted to everything. He said it was Richard who told him to do it. However, Richard insists that this is all a lie and that he never gave such an order. The Duke turned to Richard, asking why he would do something so reckless, but Richard kept denying it, pleading with his uncle to trust him. He pointed out that someone else was to blame, looking at them with desperation for their belief. He insisted that he would never do something as crazy as trying to kill his own brother. Wilfred agreed that Richard wouldn't have the guts to go after him. Richard felt a spark of hope, knowing he could never take such a drastic step. But then Wilfred moved closer, saying that even if he believed Richard didn't give the order, Clive is still his servant, and as his lord, Richard must take responsibility. Richard looked terrified and asked Wilfred what he planned to do to him, but Wilfred had only one answer: the law is unchangeable, and he glared at Richard with intense hatred and anger. The prince was so terrified when he realized it could lead to the death penalty, according to Wilfred. Richard tried to plead for mercy, asking Wilfred to save his life, but Wilfred reminded him that the law is strict. If he gave a lighter sentence just because they are family, all the hard work he did to keep the law strong, even going as far as carrying out purges, would fall apart. The changes he made would lose their meaning. That's why, even though Richard is his brother, he can't forgive him. Richard begs for his life, saying he doesn't want to die and claims it wasn't his fault but the Queen's. He insists that the Queen told him to do it. He keeps begging, saying it was an accident and not his doing. Wilfred finds this funny and realizes that Richard is indeed the one behind everything. Richard finally understands what he did and that he sold himself. Wilfred asks why he tried to kill Alicia, but Richard stays silent. So, Wilfred threatens him, if pulling out nails will make him talk, and fortunately Richard has 10 fingers. And if Richard still won't speak after that, the next thing he'll break is his bones. Suddenly, Richard blurts out that he thought something would be taken from him. Wilfred is confused and asks what he means and who would take what. Richard shouts that it's obvious because he thought Wilfred and Alicia would have a child, and then the throne would be taken from him. Wilfred seems speechless. Richard continues, saying that before, Wilfred didn't seem interested in women, so he felt safe. But now with Alicia, Wilfred looks so close to her, and he thought it was just a matter of time. Once Wilfred has his own child, he would definitely want to keep the throne for the child's sake, and even if Wilfred doesn't plan to do that right now, he is still human. Now, Wilfred understands why this is happening. He won't blame Richard for his thoughts, but for someone who wants to be king, it was really foolish and hasty. Wilfred starts to draw his sword. Richard stared at him, scared of what was coming next. Wilfred really plans to give him the throne. Richard can't believe that Wilfred is serious about killing him, but Wilfred is definitely not joking. He aims his sword at Richard, and he told him that even if it wasn't intentional, anyone who threatens the king gets executed. But with that kind of foolishness, even if he lived on, Richard would only harm the kingdom. Richard screamed in fear, pleading with Wilfred to save him, saying he was telling the truth and wishing for mercy. He promised to give up his claim to the throne and be a good noble, begging just to keep his life. But Wilfred asked if that would be enough. He remembered what Alicia had said about Richard looking like a spoiled kid who's never faced any struggles. Wilfred felt defeated for hoping in someone like him. He had called Alicia blind many times, but really, it was his own vision that was clouded. Richard desperately pleaded, saying he would become a commoner or even live in a prison cell if that's what it took, trying to convince Wilfred to spare his life as he cried. But Wilfred, being a man of the law, didn't change his decision. He swung his sword, decapitating Richard. Wilfred stood there, drenched in his younger brother's blood. But at least Richard wouldn't suffer, and as his brother, this was Wilfred's last act of kindness. Wilfred was standing by the window sipping on some whiskey. He thought that on days like this, nothing is better than a drink, especially when the heat that burns the throat and stomach feels really good. Alicia walked into the room and called out to him. She wasn't sure what to say, but she wanted to check if everything was okay. He reassured her that there was no issue. They just punish those who break the law, and they are simply following the law. It's just the usual. Alicia couldn't believe he called it just the usual since it was his younger brother. But Wilfred still, she couldn't accept it. Even if he said it wasn't the first time, it just couldn't be true. Wilfred looked at her and was surprised to see tears in her eyes. He asked her why she was crying, and she wiped her tears and apologized. But whenever she thought about Wilfred's feelings, she just couldn't help but cry. He sighed and waved his hands, thinking that women often cry out of sympathy, but he felt he might be wrong. Alicia was confused by what he meant, but Wilfred assured her that he wasn't troubled or sad. However, Alicia couldn't believe it, insisting that he was definitely upset about it. But Wilfred knew that even if she said that, if it's not here, it's not there. Alicia wasn't giving up, saying that his only younger brother had betrayed him and died, so there was no way Wilfred wouldn't be hurt by it. Then Wilfred suddenly shouted at her to stop and to not presume to know how someone feels in their heart. Alicia fell silent, shocked by his unexpected outburst. Wilfred told her that if she wanted to play the pity game, she should do it somewhere else because he wasn't in the mood for it while he kept sipping his whiskey. She said sorry for speaking out of turn, and he looked at her in shock, but he quickly got himself together and turned his head away. He wanted to say that if she was going to back down so easily, she shouldn't have stepped in at all, but it's just a bother. He was about to say something, but Alicia interrupted him by screaming that this was something she absolutely wouldn't give in on, and that there was no way he wasn't hurting. Wilfred was taken aback. Those eyes were the same ones he saw during the wedding ceremony, full of determination and able to see right through him. He found her persistence interesting, and she insisted that she would keep being persistent because she couldn't stand to watch. Wilfred rubbed his head, wondering what she couldn't bear to watch, and if it was a pity game. Alicia told him he looked like he was suffering, and he asked her what exactly about him looked that way, to which she replied that it was everything. She said he had a pained expression on his face, but he argued that it was just her assumption making it seem that way. However, she wasn't backing down, saying he looked more miserable than usual, but he explained that he had always been a gloomy guy. She blurted out that he had a melancholic vibe about him, but he said she was just being too subjective and still lacking details. Alicia pointed her finger at him, noting how he was drinking unusually, but he countered that he felt a bit better and that he drank occasionally. But she figured he didn't usually drink, and he quickly made up an excuse that it was a full moon and moon viewing would be nice for a change. She pouted, feeling a bit defeated, and he set his drink down, asking her if that was all. But it seemed like there was more. She pointed out that he was clearly in a worse mood than usual, but he told her it was because she kept saying weird things. Alicia is confused about the strange things he says. He points out that she keeps saying he is suffering when he really isn't, and she keeps pushing that idea onto him, which is starting to annoy him. She knows he's not telling the truth. He asked her to stop making assumptions, but she noticed he seems to enjoy this kind of bickering somehow, but not today. He was taken aback. She thinks it's odd that he raises his voice, and when he gets mad, he turns cold instead of being hot-headed. This shocked Wilfred even more. Alicia is amazed that he doesn't realize it. She explains that sometimes he gives off a vibe, especially when he's reading work stuff. Normally, Wilfred gets angry in a quiet, icy, dismissive way, but now he's showing a lot of emotion, which she finds strange. He feels embarrassed because he's human too, and there are days like that. He looks away while she explains that if he was betrayed by his younger brother, whom he cared for, and had to kill him, it would definitely hurt. He admits that it still doesn't hit him hard, his chest doesn't feel tight, and he doesn't feel suffocated. He understands that he's not acting like his usual self, but it's not a big deal. He still can't even cry. Alicia can't believe what she's hearing. She tells him that just because people cry doesn't mean they are the only ones in pain, and those who don't cry aren't always okay. She remembers her mom's words from long ago. When her mom was younger, she went through a lot of painful experiences, and for a while, her heart felt numb, making her insensitive to many things. He figured that it fits him. From other people's point of view, his life could be summed up in one word: brutal. Alicia continues, saying her mom was just gritting her teeth and enduring everything, not realizing that her heart was really getting hurt. She would even push away kind words from others because she couldn't recognize it, and it was making her feel more and more alone, and the hurt built up slowly over time. Then one day, it felt like something broke inside her. A sound like a string snapping echoed in her mind, and everything around her lost its color. Food tasted bland, and even talking to people felt empty. Everything seemed far away. Her heart didn't even flutter. She described it as a tasteless, empty world. Wilfred thought the world was completely rotten, and people often said he had no heart, but he believed he had his own happiness, anger, sadness, and joy. The thought of all that disappearing frightened him. He asked her how her mother helped her with that numb feeling, and she flinched at his sudden question. She turned red while he waited for her to respond. Suddenly, she hugged him, surprising Wilfred with her unexpected action. He asked if this was her way of helping, and she nodded, though she felt shy about it too. He said sorry, but he wasn't sure how hugging could help him. She reassured him that if he was hurting or in pain, anyone would want the warmth of another person. He finally understood what human warmth felt like, and it didn't disgust him. He said the heaviness in his heart had lightened a bit. He was about to tell her it was enough, but he stopped. He couldn't say it. Their marriage was only temporary, and anything more than hugging would be crossing a line. Helping each other's wounds wouldn't fix anything, and it was just a momentary comfort. He knew that, but it was hard for him to let go. She suddenly told him not to say something so lonely like, "That's enough." She could see right through him, but it felt strange to him. It wasn't like he had never shared a bed with a woman before, but he had never felt anything like this. He found it odd that only Alicia's warmth was the only warmth he could accept so easily. His thoughts are filled with pictures of her, and he wonders if it's because she's so real. Alicia is really bad at pretending or putting on a show, and her actions make her seem like a failure as a noble lady. But that's exactly what makes her kindness so genuine. He doesn't have to search for hidden motives, and he has no doubts about her. He realizes that this is what people mean by sincerity, and he never knew it could affect the heart so much. Tears begin to roll down his cheeks, and he's surprised to see them. He thought he had lost the ability to cry since he was a kid. He rests his chin on her shoulder and finally admits that she was right. He was sad after all, as he hugs her back. Richard was his only brother. He never wanted him to betray him, and he didn't want to kill him. He wanted him to be happy if he could, but for the good of the nation, he had no choice but to kill him as he continued to cry on her shoulders. He didn't understand how much it hurt him. His body shook and trembled from crying. He held her even tighter. It was a gentle hug that wraps even Wilfred's hurt heart. And for now, he holds onto that warmth while he cries his heart out. Chapters end at 12. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you loved this manga. Have a good day.